My name is Cassandra Wilson, and I am 31 years old. I lay at the bottom of the frigid hospital staircase, agony coursing through every part of my body. Through clouded vision, I saw my sister Bria sneering down at me. "You had it coming," she murmured. My parents hurried past me instantly, encircling their arms around her as she started to weep on cue. "It was an accident, wasn't it, Bria?" my father inquired anxiously. I attempted to speak but couldn't through the piercing pain. That's when I observed head nurse Marlene looking at the security camera, her finger already hitting record. Before I proceed with my story, I would love to know where you are viewing from. Please hit subscribe and like this video to discover how that security camera footage transformed everything for my family and me. Growing up in our wealthy Boston suburb, I constantly felt like a stranger in my own family. Our brick colonial home with its perfectly trimmed lawn and heated swimming pool appeared flawless from the outside. But within those walls, a different truth existed. I discovered early that my sister Bria, who is 3 years younger than me, was the favored child. At 28, Bria had always been remarkably beautiful with her flawless blonde hair, brilliant blue eyes, and captivating smile that could enchant anyone. She knew precisely how to use that charm to twist our parents Eleanor and Robert Wilson around her finger. The pattern began when we were small. On my 8th birthday, my parents invited all my classmates for a celebration in our backyard. I had been anticipating it for weeks. Mom had promised a special cake with my favorite strawberry filling. When the day finally came, I found Bria sobbing in the kitchen. Apparently, she was distressed because it wasn't her birthday. Instead of explaining to a 5-year-old that birthdays take turns, my mother immediately contacted the bakery and had them add Bria's name to my cake. By the end of the celebration, Bria had unwrapped 3 of my presents, insisting they were intended for her. When I protested, my father pulled me aside. "Why can't you be more generous like your sister?" he asked, his disappointment clear. "She shares everything with you." That was the first vivid memory I had of recognizing my place in the family hierarchy. But it certainly wasn't the last. When I made honor roll in high school, my parents nodded absent-mindedly. When Bria got a C+ in math that same year, they took her out for an expensive dinner to celebrate her progress. The year I received a full academic scholarship to Boston University, my achievement was mentioned briefly at dinner. 3 months later, when Bria decided she wanted to attend community college part-time, my parents threw a party and purchased her a new car as motivation. Our family therapist, Dr. Reynolds, never seemed to notice the imbalance. I tried explaining the pattern during our mandatory family sessions when I was 16, but he just smiled sympathetically and suggested I might be experiencing normal sibling competition. My parents nodded in agreement, and Bria dabbed at non-existent tears, claiming she just wanted a better relationship with her envious big sister. Despite the constant undermining, I worked hard to build my marketing career. I put myself through graduate school while working 2 jobs. By 30, I had secured a position as marketing director for a growing tech company. The promotion had come through just 2 weeks before the hospital incident. When I called my parents to share the news, my mother's first response was, "That's nice, dear, but did you hear Bria might be getting back together with Tyler? He comes from such a good family." The incident that changed everything occurred when my grandmother Martha was hospitalized for pneumonia. At 84, she was the only family member who had ever shown me unconditional love. She had moved in with my parents after my grandfather passed away 5 years earlier, and I made a point to visit her regularly despite the uncomfortable atmosphere in my childhood home. That day, I arrived at Massachusetts General Hospital at exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon. My parents were already in Grandma's room, sitting rigidly in the visitor chairs while she slept. They acknowledged me with brief nods. I sat by Grandma's bed, gently taking her hand. When she woke, her face illuminated with a smile that made my heart ache. We chatted for nearly an hour about her garden plans for spring and my new promotion. My parents occasionally interrupted with comments about Bria's latest accomplishments, which mostly involved her social media following and a potential opportunity to model for a local boutique. Bria arrived nearly 2 hours late, making a theatrical entrance with a small gift bag and excuses about traffic. Grandma was polite, but clearly tired. When she drifted off to sleep again, Bria immediately began discussing Grandma's jewelry collection. "I really think I should get the sapphire necklace," she said, examining her reflection in her compact mirror. "It matches my eyes, and Cassandra doesn't even wear jewelry." My mother nodded. "That makes sense. We should probably start sorting through things soon just to be prepared." "She's getting better, not dying," I said, shocked at their callousness. "And maybe we shouldn't discuss dividing her possessions while she's right here in the room." My father gave me that familiar disapproving look. "Always so dramatic, Cassandra. We're just being practical." The tension was thick by the time visiting hours ended at 7. Grandma had only been awake for brief periods, and I felt guilty about the atmosphere we had created in her room. As we gathered our things to leave, I noticed Bria slipped something from Grandma's bedside drawer into her purse. I said nothing, but made a mental note to check what was missing on my next visit. We left Grandma's room together, my father leading the way toward the bank of elevators at the end of the corridor. The hallway was quiet except for the squeak of nurses' shoes on the polished floor and the distant beeping of medical equipment. My mother walked close to Bria, their heads bent together in hushed conversation. I caught fragments about the diamond earrings and family tradition, which only intensified my unease. As we approached the elevators, Bria suddenly turned to me. "That lipstick color makes you look washed out," she said loudly. "And is that the same outfit you wore to Cousin Amber's wedding last year? I guess the big promotion hasn't improved your fashion sense." I took a deep breath, determined not to engage. "I'm not really concerned about my lipstick right now, Bria. I'm worried about Grandma." My mother immediately jumped to Bria's defense. "Your sister is just trying to help you, Cassandra. You could put a little more effort into your appearance, especially since you're representing the family at that new job." The familiar sting of their unified front against me burned, but I had years of practice swallowing my hurt. The elevator arrived with a soft chime, and my father held the door open. The thought of being confined in that small space with them for 6 floors suddenly felt unbearable. "I'll take the stairs," I said, stepping back. "I could use the exercise." My father shrugged. "Suit yourself." The elevator doors were already closing when I heard Bria tell my mother I should talk to her. She seemed upset about the jewelry conversation. Before I could process what was happening, Bria had slipped out of the elevator and was following me toward the stairwell door. I pushed it open, the heavy metal cool against my palm. The stairwell was brightly lit, but empty, our footsteps echoing as I started down the concrete steps. "You don't have to pretend you care," I said over my shoulder, gripping the metal handrail. Bria's voice changed, dropping the syrupy sweetness she used around our parents. "I saw you watching me in Grandma's room. Always the self-righteous one, aren't you?" I stopped at the landing between the 5th and 4th floors, turning to face her. "Did you take something from her drawer?" Bria's perfectly manicured hand clutched her designer purse tighter. "None of your business. Besides, she promised me her jewelry years ago." "That's not true and you know it," I countered. "Grandma would never play favorites like Mom and Dad." Something flashed in Bria's eyes. "Everyone plays favorites, Cassandra. It's not my fault no one picks you." I shook my head, turning to continue down the stairs. "I'm not doing this with you. Not here." "Must be hard," Bria continued, following close behind me. "Getting that big promotion when everyone knows you'll never be good enough. Does your boss know your family can barely stand you?" I kept walking, focusing on each step. 1, 2, 3, 4. "I saw the way Grandma lit up when you walked in." Bria's voice had taken on a dangerous edge. "She never looks at me like that." "Maybe because you only visit when you want something," I replied without turning around. "You know, she changed her will last month," Bria said, her voice closer now. "After you helped with her physical therapy, suddenly you're getting the beach house, the one Dad promised me." I reached the landing between the 4th and 3rd floors and turned in surprise. "What are you talking about? I don't know anything about her will." Bria's face was flushed with anger. Don't play innocent. You've been manipulating her, turning her against me, just like you're trying to turn mom and dad against me with your perfect job and your perfect apartment. That's ridiculous, I said, genuinely confused. I've never discussed any of that with Grandma. And now you're going to tell them about the money, aren't you? Bria's voice had risen to a near shout. About the gambling. You've always been waiting for a chance to make me look bad. The revelation clicked into place. The unexplained borrowing from our parents, the expensive purses that appeared and disappeared, the constant need for just a little help with rent. I hadn't known about gambling specifically, but the patterns suddenly made sense. Bria, I don't care about your gambling. That's between you and whatever therapist you should be seeing. I just want to leave now. I turned to continue down the stairs, and that's when it happened. I felt Bria's hands against my back, a hard, deliberate shove that instantly threw me off balance. There was a moment of terrible weightlessness as my feet left the step. My hands reached frantically for the railing, but found only empty space. The fall seemed to occur in slow motion. My body pitched forward, a nauseating sensation as gravity took control. I counted each collision against the hard concrete steps. 1, my shoulder. 2, my hip. 3, my head. 4, my ribs. The agony erupted through me in waves, each one more severe than the last. Through the haze of shock, I heard myself scream, the sound reverberating in the stairwell. As I tumbled, fragmented memories flashed through my mind. Bria cutting the hair off my dolls when we were children, claiming it was an accident. Bria accidentally spilling punch on my prom dress hours before my date arrived. Bria accidentally deleting my college application essay from the family computer the night before it was due. But this was no accident. I came to rest at the bottom of the flight, sprawled across the landing between the third and second floors. My vision swam with dark spots, but I could make out Bria standing at the top of the stairs, a satisfied smile playing across her lips. The expression vanished instantly when the stairwell door above her opened and my parents entered. Bria, what happened? My mother's voice echoed with panic. She fell, Bria cried, her voice suddenly trembling with manufactured fear. I tried to catch her, but she was going too fast. My parents rushed down the stairs, but they didn't come to me. Instead, they gathered around Bria, who had now collapsed onto a step, her shoulders shaking with perfectly timed sobs. You deserve it, she had whispered before they arrived. Now I watched through a haze of pain as my father wrapped a protective arm around her shoulders. It was an accident, right, Bria? He asked, his voice urgent and nervous. Through my pain, I tried to speak, to tell them what had really happened, but all that escaped was a groan. The stairwell door on the third floor burst open and head nurse Marlene rushed in with 2 male orderlies. Call a code, she shouted, kneeling beside me. As she leaned close to check my pupils, her eyes flicked up toward the ceiling corner. That's when I noticed the small security camera, its red light blinking steadily. Nurse Marlene had seen it too, and something in her expression told me she understood exactly what had happened. Don't move her yet, Nurse Marlene instructed the orderlies as she carefully stabilized my neck. Her hands were gentle but firm, her eyes focused completely on assessing my injuries. I tried again to speak but only managed a whimper as pain radiated from my ribs with each shallow breath. My parents remained several steps above us, still comforting Bria, who had escalated to full-blown hysterics. Through my foggy consciousness, I heard my father explaining to another hospital staff member who had arrived. My daughters were walking down the stairs. Cassandra was going too fast and lost her footing. Bria tried to catch her but couldn't reach her in time. She just fell so suddenly, Bria added between dramatic sobs. 1 minute we were talking about Grandma and the next she was tumbling down. I screamed for help, but it happened so fast. Nurse Marlene's eyes narrowed slightly at their explanation, but she remained focused on me. We're going to move you onto a backboard, she explained calmly. Try to remain as still as possible. Can you tell me your name? Cassandra, I managed to whisper. Good. Cassandra, can you tell me where you feel pain? Everywhere, I gasped. Ribs, head, wrist. The orderlies carefully slid a backboard beneath me and secured straps across my body. As they prepared to lift me, I caught Nurse Marlene looking up at the security camera again, her expression thoughtful. She turned to one of the other nurses who had arrived. Julie, please note the time of the incident and make sure all security footage is preserved, she said quietly but firmly. Standard procedure for falls in the hospital. As they lifted me onto the stretcher, a fresh wave of agony washed over me, and I fought to remain conscious. Through slitted eyes, I saw my mother finally approach, her hand resting protectively on Bria's shoulder. We'll follow you down, she told the medical team, not meeting my eyes. Bria's in shock. She tried so hard to save her sister. The stretcher began moving, and I was whisked through corridors, the fluorescent lights overhead passing in a nauseating blur. In the emergency department, Dr. Winters, a stern-faced man with salt and pepper hair, quickly assessed my condition. CT scan, chest X-ray, and wrist X-ray stat, he ordered. Likely concussion, possible internal injuries. The next few hours passed in fragments. The cold table of the CT machine, the radiologist's gentle hands positioning my wrist, the sting of an 4 needle, the gradual dulling of pain as medication flowed into my veins. Through it all, I tried to hold on to consciousness, desperate to tell someone what had really happened. As I was being wheeled back from one of the scans, I passed the emergency room waiting area where my parents sat with Bria. My mother was wiping tears from Bria's face while my father spoke intently to a uniformed police officer. Hospital security stood nearby taking notes. Officer Jenkins, we understand this is protocol, my father was saying, his voice carrying the authoritative tone he used when closing business deals, but I assure you this was simply an unfortunate accident. My younger daughter witnessed the entire thing and tried to prevent it. I wanted to scream the truth, but my mouth wouldn't cooperate. The medication was pulling me under, making my thoughts fuzzy and disconnected. Later, in a private room, Dr. Winters delivered his diagnosis to me. 3 broken ribs, a fractured left wrist, moderate concussion, and significant internal bruising. You're very lucky, Miss Wilson. Falls down concrete stairs can be fatal. Lucky wasn't the word I would have chosen. As night fell, I drifted in and out of consciousness, vaguely aware of nurses checking my vital signs and adjusting my medication. Through the fog, I heard my parents' voices in the hallway outside my room. We need to get our story straight before she's fully conscious, my father was saying, his voice low but intense. The hospital is required to report injuries like this. Bria is devastated, my mother replied. She really tried to catch Cassandra. Of course she did, my father agreed quickly. And that's exactly what we tell everyone. It was a tragic accident. Cassandra was always clumsy as a child. Their voices faded as they moved down the hall, leaving me alone with the rhythmic beeping of monitors and the growing certainty that no one would believe me against the united front of my family. No one except perhaps for Nurse Marlene, who had seen something in that security camera that made her suspicious. As the pain medication pulled me back under, I clung to that small hope like a lifeline. Sunlight streaming through the blinds woke me the next morning. My whole body felt like it had been run over by a truck, each breath sending sharp pains through my chest. I blinked at the unfamiliar ceiling, momentarily disoriented until the events of the previous day came flooding back. Bria's hands on my back. The terrible weightlessness of falling. My parents rushing to comfort her instead of me. A young nurse with a kind smile entered, checking the monitors beside my bed. Her name tag read, Tracy. Good morning, Cassandra. I'm going to check your pain level and vitals. Okay, I nodded slightly, wincing at the movement. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your pain right now? 8, I whispered through dry lips. Tracy nodded sympathetically. That's to be expected after what you've been through. I'll give you something for the pain after I check your blood pressure. As she wrapped the cuff around my uninjured arm, I gathered my courage. The security camera, I managed, In the stairwell. Tracy looked confused. I'm sorry. Before I could explain, the door opened and my family filed in. My mother carried a vase of yellow roses. My father clutched a stuffed bear with a get-well-soon balloon, and Bria trailed behind them, her eyes downcast in a perfect display of sisterly concern. The performance would have been convincing if I hadn't caught the brief, triumphant glance she shot me when my parents weren't looking. "Oh, sweetheart," my mother exclaimed, setting the flowers on the windowsill. "We were so worried about you." My father placed the bear on the bedside table. "The doctor says you're going to be just fine. A few weeks of rest and you'll be good as new." Bria remained near the door, dabbing at invisible tears. "I'm so sorry I couldn't catch you," she whispered. "It all happened so fast." Nurse Tracy smiled at them. "I'll leave you folks to visit. The doctor will be by in about an hour for rounds. Just press the call button if you need anything, Cassandra." As soon as the door closed behind her, the atmosphere in the room shifted subtly. My mother's smile became fixed, my father's posture stiffened, and Bria moved closer to them as if seeking protection. "We've spoken to the hospital administrator," my father said, his business voice taking over. "Since this was clearly an accident, they just need you to sign some forms for the insurance claim." He pulled several papers from his jacket pocket and placed them on the tray table across my bed. I stared at the documents, then back at my father. "It wasn't an accident," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. Bria pushed me. The room went completely silent for 3 heartbeats. Then my mother laughed, a high, nervous sound. "The medication must be making you confused," she said, patting my hand. "You fell, sweetheart. Bria tried to catch you." "No," I insisted, looking directly at Bria. "She pushed me." She was angry about Grandma's will. My father's face darkened. "That's enough, Cassandra. You've always had a flair for the dramatic, but this is serious. Your accusations could hurt your sister's reputation." "What about my injuries?" I asked incredulously. 3 broken ribs, a fractured wrist, a concussion. "Doesn't that matter to you?" "Of course it matters," my mother interjected quickly. "We're all upset about your fall." "It wasn't a fall," I repeated firmly. "And there's a security camera in that stairwell. It will show exactly what happened." A flicker of uncertainty crossed my father's face, but Bria stepped forward, tears now streaming down her cheeks. "How can you say that?" she cried. "I tried to save you. I reached for you, but you were falling too fast." My mother immediately wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Sure. It's okay, darling. Cassandra is just confused from the medication and the head injury. She doesn't mean it." "Actually, she might be right about the confusion," my father said, his tone calculated. "In fact, we should mention this to the doctor. Memory problems after concussions are common. You probably don't remember what really happened, Cassandra." The gaslighting was so familiar, I could have scripted it. Before I could respond, a nurse appeared at the door. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's been a change in Martha Wilson's condition. The doctor would like to speak with the family." My parents exchanged worried glances. "We should go," my mother said. "Bria, stay with your sister. We'll be back soon." As they hurried out, Bria's sympathetic expression vanished. She moved close to my bed, her voice dropping to a whisper. "No one will believe you over me. They never have. If you know what's good for you, you'll sign those papers and say it was an accident." "Why?" I asked, genuinely wanting to understand. "What did I ever do to make you hate me so much?" Something flickered in her eyes. "You existed. Always so perfect, so responsible. Grandma's favorite." She picked up the pen and held it out to me. "Sign the papers, Cassandra, or things will get much worse for you." Before I could respond, the door opened again. Nurse Marlene entered, her expression unreadable. Bria immediately stepped back, tears magically reappearing. "I'll get you some water, sis," she said loudly. Be right back. As Bria slipped out, Nurse Marlene closed the door behind her and approached my bed. How are you feeling today, Cassandra? She asked, checking my fore. Like I've been pushed down a flight of stairs, I replied, watching her reaction carefully. Her eyes met mine, sharp and knowing. Interesting choice of words. She glanced at the door to ensure we were alone. I checked the security footage from the stairwell yesterday. My heart jumped painfully against my broken ribs. You did. She nodded. Hospital protocol for any fall on premises. I've been a nurse for 20 years, Miss Wilson. I know what an accident looks like, and I know what an intentional push looks like. Hope bloomed in my chest for the first time since the incident. What happens now? I've already spoken to Mr. Dawson, the hospital administrator. The footage has been secured and reported to hospital security and the police. Officer Jenkins will want to speak with you once you're feeling a bit stronger. Tears of relief stung my eyes. Thank you for believing me. Nurse Marlene's expression softened. I believe what I saw, and what I saw was assault. She checked her watch. Your family will be in a meeting with your grandmother's doctor for at least 30 minutes. Would you like to see the footage? I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. She pulled out a tablet from her pocket and tapped the screen several times. Mr. Dawson authorized me to show you this. The camera angle is clear. The video showed the stairwell from above. I watched myself enter with Bria following close behind. There was no audio, but our body language told the story. Me walking down the stairs, turning occasionally to respond to her. Bria's increasingly aggressive posture. Our stop on the landing where we clearly argued. Then unmistakably, Bria's hands extending forcefully into my back as I turned to continue down the stairs. My body pitching forward, the desperate grab for the railing, the sickening tumble down the concrete steps. Bria's satisfied expression as she watched me fall, quickly replaced by false panic when my parents entered seconds later. I couldn't speak for several moments after the video ended. The validation of what I had experienced was overwhelming. There are cameras on each landing, Nurse Marlene explained. We have footage from multiple angles. There's no ambiguity about what happened. My parents won't believe it, I said quietly. They'll find a way to explain it away. They may try, she agreed. But the evidence speaks for itself. We heard voices approaching in the hallway. Nurse Marlene quickly tucked the tablet away. Hospital security will be speaking with your family this afternoon. Try to rest until then. The door opened and my parents entered with Bria trailing behind them. My father's expression was tense, my mother's eyes red-rimmed. Grandma's pneumonia has developed complications, my mother explained. They're moving her to intensive care. Under normal circumstances, I would have immediately asked for details, offered comfort, made plans to visit her, but all I could think about was the security footage and what was about to happen. I didn't have to wait long. Within minutes, a knock at the door announced the arrival of 2 uniformed hospital security officers and a man in a suit who introduced himself as Gregory Dawson, hospital administrator. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, Mr. Dawson said formally, we need to speak with you regarding the incident involving your daughters yesterday. My father immediately took charge. Of course. As we explained to Officer Jenkins, it was an unfortunate accident. Cassandra lost her footing on the stairs and Bria was unable to catch her in time. Mr. Dawson's expression remained neutral. We've reviewed the security footage from the stairwell, Mr. Wilson. I'm afraid it shows something quite different. The blood drained from my father's face. What are you implying? The footage clearly shows Brianna Wilson deliberately pushing Cassandra, causing her fall and subsequent injuries. Bria gasped dramatically. That's not true. I would never hurt my sister. My mother clutched her pearls. There must be some mistake. Perhaps the angle of the camera is misleading. We have footage from multiple cameras, one of the security officers explained. The evidence is unambiguous. We've already provided copies to the police. My father's shock quickly transformed into damage control. I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. Family matters can be complex. Perhaps there was a playful interaction that went wrong. Pushing someone down a concrete staircase is not playful, Mr. Wilson, Nurse Marlene said firmly. Bria suddenly collapsed into a chair, her whole demeanor changing. Tears flowed freely as she covered her face with her hands. It was an accident, she wailed. We were arguing, and I just reached out. I never meant to push her so hard. The swift pivot to admitting partial responsibility while minimizing intent was classic Bria. I watched my parents immediately move to her side, their protective instincts activating. You see, a terrible accident during a sisterly disagreement, my father insisted. Surely we can handle this as a family matter. Mr. Dawson shook his head. I'm afraid not. The hospital has a legal obligation to report assault on our premises, especially when it results in serious injuries. The police will want statements from everyone involved. As if on cue, Officer Jenkins appeared at the door with a female detective. The room suddenly felt very small with so many people. My father's face hardened as he turned to me. Cassandra, think very carefully about what you're doing. This is your sister, your family. Do you really want to destroy all of us over a momentary disagreement? The emotional manipulation might have worked before, but something had changed inside me. Perhaps it was seeing the indisputable evidence, or maybe it was the validation from Nurse Marlene and the hospital staff. Whatever the reason, I found my voice. I didn't push myself down those stairs, Dad. Bria did. And for once, I'm not going to pretend otherwise just to keep the peace. My mother's face crumpled. How can you do this to us, to your sister, after everything we've done for you? The absurdity of her statement might have made me laugh if it weren't so painful. Everything they'd done for me, like always taking Bria's side, like minimizing my accomplishments while celebrating her mediocrity. Mrs. Wilson, the female detective intervened, your daughter is the victim here. She has 3 broken ribs, a fractured wrist, and a concussion. I suggest you consider that before accusing her of causing harm to the family. As the detective approached my bed, I realized I was facing a choice. I could give in to the pressure as I had so many times before, or I could finally stand up for myself and demand the truth be acknowledged. Looking at my family's faces, I knew they expected me to fold. They were counting on the lifetime of conditioning that had taught me to put Bria's needs and feelings above my own. Not this time. Detective Sarah Harris was thorough and compassionate as she took my statement later that afternoon. A woman in her mid-40s with practical short hair and intelligent eyes, she recorded every detail of my account from the argument in the stairwell to Bria's whispered, "You deserved it," as I lay injured. "The security footage confirms your version of events," she told me after I finished. "We have clear views from 3 different cameras. There's no question that this was a deliberate act." "My family won't see it that way," I said wearily. "They'll find a way to excuse her behavior. They always do." Detective Harris made a note. "Has your sister been violent toward you before?" The question made me pause. Had she? There had been plenty of accidents over the years. The time she'd accidentally slammed my hand in the car door. The accidental spilling of hot coffee on my lap during a family dinner. The accidental deletion of my thesis from my laptop just before deadline. "Nothing this serious," I finally answered. "But there's been a pattern of harmful behavior disguised as accidents." "And your parents typically side with your sister?" "Without fail." She nodded thoughtfully. "I've already spoken with your parents and sister. They've hired an attorney, Richard Cooper. He's well known in the city." Of course they had. My father would spare no expense to protect his favorite daughter. "What happens now?" I asked. "We've filed assault charges against Brianna Wilson. Given the severity of your injuries and the clear evidence, the DA is taking this very seriously. There will be a preliminary hearing once you're well enough to attend." The reality of what this meant hit me fully. This wasn't just about standing up for myself anymore. My sister could face criminal charges. My family relationships, already strained, might be permanently destroyed. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was I doing the right thing? Detective Harris seemed to read my thoughts. Cassandra, what happened to you wasn't a minor family squabble. Your injuries could have been fatal. You have every right to seek justice. After she left, I lay back against the pillows, exhausted but resolute. My phone buzzed with incoming messages. News travels fast in a family crisis. My Uncle Thomas expressing shock and asking what really happened. My cousin Jenna indicating she always knew Bria had issues. And most surprisingly, a message from my father's sister, Aunt Gillian, whom I hadn't seen in over a year. I believe you, her text read simply. Call me when you can talk privately. The next morning brought a new development. Bria had apparently shared her version of events on social media, portraying herself as the victim of a misunderstanding. According to her post, I had been acting erratically in the stairwell, and she had merely reached out to stabilize me when I lost my balance. The security footage, she claimed, failed to capture the full context. My marketing colleague, Denise, forwarded me a screenshot with a concerned message. Is this true? People are sharing it everywhere. Soon after, my phone rang with an unknown number. It was my boss, Martin. Cassandra, I've received some concerning calls about you, he began awkwardly. Someone claiming to be your mother said you're having a mental health crisis and making false accusations against family members. I closed my eyes, the betrayal cutting deep. Martin, I'm in the hospital with 3 broken ribs and a fractured wrist because my sister pushed me down a flight of stairs. There's security footage that proves it. His relief was audible. That's what I figured. Take all the time you need to recover. Your job is secure. Not everyone was so supportive. By afternoon, I discovered that Bria had started a GoFundMe campaign titled, Help Me Fight False Accusations. The description painted me as a jealous sister who had fabricated an assault claim after an accidental fall. It had already raised several $1,000s. Dr. Stein, the hospital psychologist, visited me that evening. A thoughtful woman with a gentle demeanor, she explained that Nurse Marlene had requested a psychological consultation. Often in cases of family violence, there are patterns of emotional abuse that precede physical incidents, she explained. Would you be comfortable talking about your family dynamics? For the first time, I spoke openly about growing up in Bria's shadow. The constant comparisons, the dismissal of my achievements, the subtle and not so subtle message that I was less valuable, less loved. Dr. Stein listened without judgment, occasionally asking clarifying questions. What you're describing fits a pattern of narcissistic family structure, she said after I finished. The golden child and scapegoat dynamic is unfortunately common, though it doesn't usually escalate to physical violence. So I'm not crazy for feeling this way? She smiled kindly. Quite the opposite. Your perceptions appear remarkably clear despite years of gaslighting. That shows significant emotional resilience. Our session was interrupted by a nurse informing me that my parents were demanding to see me. Dr. Stein offered to stay if I wanted support, but I declined. This confrontation was long overdue. They entered looking grim, my father clutching a leather portfolio that likely contained legal documents. The preliminary hearing is scheduled for next Wednesday, he announced without preamble. Richard believes we can get this whole unfortunate situation dismissed. By unfortunate situation, you mean Bria pushing me down the stairs? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Darling, you need to understand what this is doing to the family. Your grandmother's condition has worsened from the stress. Bria can't sleep. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof. And I have 3 broken ribs, a fractured wrist, and a concussion, I reminded her. Because my sister deliberately pushed me down a flight of concrete stairs. My father's jaw tightened. The footage is open to interpretation. Richard says juries understand that family arguments can lead to regrettable moments of physical contact. Physical contact. I repeated incredulously. She could have killed me. Don't be melodramatic, my mother sniffed. Dr. Winters said you're healing well. My father opened his portfolio and removed some papers. We have a simple solution. Sign this statement saying you don't wish to press charges and we can put this whole mess behind us. I stared at the document, then back at my parents. And if I don't? His expression hardened. Then you're no longer welcome in this family. Your trust fund will be revoked. Your relationship with your grandmother, your cousins, your entire extended family will be irreparably damaged. Is that really what you want? The threat was explicit and brutal. Everything I had feared. But something had shifted inside me during my days in the hospital. Perhaps it was seeing the incontrovertible evidence of Bria's actions, or the validation from medical professionals and law enforcement that what happened to me mattered. What I want, I said slowly, is for Bria to take responsibility for her actions. What I want is for you, just once, to care more about the fact that I was seriously injured than about protecting her from consequences. My mother's face crumpled. How can you be so selfish after everything we've done for you? What exactly have you done for me? I asked, genuine curiosity in my voice. When have you ever put my needs or feelings above Bria's? The question hung in the air, unanswered. My father gathered his papers stiffly. You have until the hearing to reconsider. After that, we'll have no choice but to cut ties completely. They left without another word, the threat of disownment hovering like a storm cloud. I should have felt devastated, terrified of losing my family despite their flaws. Instead, I felt an unexpected sense of clarity. For 31 years, I had been trying to earn the unconditional love that should have been my birthright. Perhaps it was time to stop trying. The day of my discharge arrived, but I had nowhere to go. My apartment was a third-floor walk-up, impossible to navigate with my injuries. My parents had made it clear that their home was only open to me if I dropped the charges against Bria. As I sat on the edge of the hospital bed in borrowed clothes, trying to figure out my next steps, Nurse Marlene knocked on the door. Your aunt is here, she said. Gillian Wilson. She says she's your father's sister. Aunt Gillian swept in, her familiar floral perfume bringing a rush of childhood memories. Unlike my mother's brittle elegance, Aunt Gillian had always been warm and genuine, with laugh lines around her eyes and a tendency to speak her mind that often put her at odds with my father. Look at you, she said, taking in my cast and the careful way I held my ribs. That girl finally went too far, didn't she? The simple acknowledgement of the truth nearly undid me. I fought back tears as Aunt Gillian sat beside me on the bed. Robert called to tell me his version of events, she continued, naming my father. Convenient accidents and misunderstandings. The same excuses he's been making for Bria since she was old enough to talk. You believe me? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Of course I do. I've watched Bria manipulate your parents for years. The difference is I never had concrete proof until now. She patted my knee. The hospital sent me your discharge instructions. You're coming to stay with me until you're back on your feet. Relief washed over me. Are you sure? Dad will be furious with you. She laughed. Robert's been furious with me since we were children. It hasn't stopped me yet. Her expression softened. The guest room is all made up. It's on the first floor, so no stairs to worry about. Aunt Gillian's cozy Cape Cod-style house became my sanctuary over the next weeks. Physical therapy was grueling, the pain often bringing me to tears, but slowly my body began to heal. The emotional wounds were proving more stubborn. 2 weeks after my discharge, I received an unexpected call from Michael, Bria's ex-boyfriend. They had dated seriously for nearly a year before breaking up 6 months earlier. I saw the news about what happened, he said without preamble. I wish I could say I was surprised. What do you mean? He hesitated. Bria has anger issues, Cassandra. I experienced it firsthand. The night we broke up, she threw a wine bottle at my head. It missed, but it put a hole in my apartment wall. My grip tightened on the phone. Did you report it? Your parents convinced me not to. She cried, said she'd get therapy. I just wanted out of the relationship. He paused. But I kept the texts she sent afterward. Threatening me, then apologizing, then threatening again. I think they might help your case. Show a pattern. The evidence continued to mount. Detective Harris uncovered 3 previous incidents where Bria had been involved in accidents that resulted in injuries to others. A college roommate who fell down icy steps after an argument with Bria. A former co-worker who suffered second-degree burns when Bria, accidentally, knocked over a pot of coffee. A neighbor's child who broke an arm falling from a tree that Bria had allegedly encouraged him to climb. In each case, your parents intervened, Detective Harris explained during one of our meetings. Financial settlements were reached. No charges filed. The pattern was clear, but the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. My grandmother, now recovered enough to leave intensive care, had requested to see me privately. I visited her hospital room, shocked by how frail she appeared. I need to give you something, she said, her voice weak but determined. She directed me to her handbag where I found a sealed envelope with my name on it. I wrote this the day after you told me about your promotion. I was going to mail it, but then I got sick. Inside was a handwritten letter detailing multiple instances where she had witnessed Bria's disturbing behavior and my parents' enabling responses. She described overhearing Bria threatening me when she thought no one was listening, and watching my parents dismiss my concerns when I tried to tell them. I changed my will last month, Grandma confirmed. Not because you manipulated me, but because I've watched how they treat you for years. You deserve better, Cassandra. Her words were the validation I had craved my entire life. As the preliminary hearing approached, I found myself surrounded by unexpected support. Nurse Marlene had organized several hospital staff who had witnessed the aftermath of the incident to testify if needed. My colleagues at the marketing firm sent daily encouragement and offers of help. Aunt Gillian stood firmly by my side, undeterred by my father's angry calls demanding she stop interfering. The night before the hearing, I received a final attempt at manipulation. My parents arrived at Aunt Gillian's house unannounced, Bria in tow. She looked thin and drawn, clearly coached to appear as pitiful as possible. "Please, Cassie," she whimpered, using a childhood nickname she knew I hated. "I made a terrible mistake. I just need one more chance." My father stepped forward with paperwork. "We've spoken to Richard. If you sign this statement withdrawing your accusations, Bria will agree to anger management classes. We can handle this privately as a family." I looked at them, really looked at them perhaps for the first time. My father, tall and imposing, used to getting his way through intimidation. My mother, perfectly coiffed even in crisis, more concerned with appearances than reality. And Bria, the master manipulator, already calculating her next move behind the tears. "No," I said simply. "What do you mean no?" my father demanded. "I mean no. I won't sign anything. I won't drop the charges. I won't pretend this didn't happen. After everything we've done for you," my mother cried, falling back on her favorite refrain. "What exactly have you done for me?" I asked again, the question that had gone unanswered in the hospital. "All my life you've taught me that my feelings don't matter, my safety doesn't matter, my achievements don't matter. The only thing that matters is protecting Bria." "That's not true," my mother protested. "It is true," Aunt Gillian interjected from behind me. "And deep down, Eleanor, you know it." My father's face darkened with anger. "This is your final chance, Cassandra. Drop this nonsense now or you are no longer our daughter." The threat that had once terrified me now felt almost liberating. "I think I stopped being your daughter a long time ago, Dad. Maybe I never really was." After they left, I sat with Aunt Gillian on her porch swing, watching the stars emerge in the clear night sky. "Am I doing the right thing?" I asked quietly. She squeezed my hand. "The right thing is rarely the easy thing, Cassandra. But yes, I believe you are. That night, I worked with my therapist, Dr. Stein, to prepare my impact statement for court. As I articulated the lifetime of emotional abuse that had culminated in physical violence, I felt something shifting inside me. For the first time, I was claiming my story, my truth, without apologizing or minimizing to make others comfortable. Whatever happens tomorrow, Dr. Stein said as we finished, you've already taken the most important step. You've chosen to value yourself. The courtroom was smaller than I had imagined, wood-paneled and formal. I sat beside Detective Harris and the district attorney, a serious woman named Julia Matthews. Across the aisle, Bria sat with my parents and Richard Cooper, the expensive attorney my father had hired. Other than Aunt Gillian and Nurse Marlene, the gallery was sparsely filled with a few reporters and court staff. Judge Peterson, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, called the court to order. The proceedings began with the presentation of evidence, including the security footage from multiple angles. The courtroom fell silent as the video played, the deliberate push unmistakable. I heard my mother's muffled sob when Bria's satisfied expression was clearly visible before she composed herself for my parents' arrival. Richard Cooper tried to argue that the footage showed an emotional moment between sisters and that Bria had reached out in frustration, not intending to cause serious harm. The judge's skeptical expression suggested she wasn't buying it. The hospital staff testified next. Dr. Winters detailed my injuries, emphasizing that falls down concrete stairs frequently result in permanent disability or death. Nurse Marlene described the discrepancy between my family's account and what the footage revealed. The hospital security officer explained the multiple camera angles that eliminated any possibility of misinterpretation. When it was my turn to speak, I felt surprisingly calm. I described the argument in the stairwell, Bria's anger over our grandmother's will, and the deliberate nature of the push. Then I read my impact statement, detailing the lifetime of emotional abuse that had preceded the physical assault. My injuries will heal, I concluded. But the knowledge that my own sister would intentionally harm me, and that my parents would choose to protect her rather than acknowledge the truth, has caused a wound that may never fully close. Bria took the stand next. Her entire demeanor transformed. Gone was the confident, manipulative woman I knew. In her place was a fragile, tearful figure who spoke in a trembling voice about her momentary lapse in judgment and deep regret. She claimed stress over our grandmother's illness had affected her mental state, causing her to react without thinking during our argument. I never meant to hurt Cassandra, she insisted, dabbing at her eyes. I love my sister. This was a terrible accident that I'll regret for the rest of my life. Her performance might have been convincing if not for the evidence that followed. Detective Harris presented Michael's text messages showing Bria's pattern of threats and manipulation. The records of previous accidents involving Bria were entered into evidence, along with documentation of the financial settlements my parents had arranged. Most damaging was my grandmother's deposition, recorded from her hospital bed since she was still too weak to attend in person. Her clear, detailed account of Bria's concerning behavior over the years and my parents' enabling responses left little room for doubt. When the evidence concluded, Judge Peterson looked directly at Bria. Miss Wilson, the evidence before this court suggests this was not an isolated incident, but part of a pattern of behavior. Do you wish to revise your statement before I make my ruling? Bria glanced at Richard Cooper, who nodded slightly. Your Honor, she began, her voice suddenly steadier, I did push my sister. I was angry about family matters and lost control, but I never intended to cause serious harm. The partial admission was clearly a strategic move, an attempt to mitigate consequences now that outright denial was no longer viable. Judge Peterson seemed unimpressed. Based on the evidence presented, including clear video footage and the defendant's partial admission, I find probable cause to proceed with charges of second-degree assault. Given the severity of the injuries and the apparent premeditation, I am setting bail at $50,000. My father immediately stood to address the court. Your Honor, our family would prefer to handle this matter privately. My daughter Brianna has agreed to seek treatment. Judge Peterson's gaze was steely. Mr. Wilson, Your adult daughter is charged with a serious criminal offense. This is no longer a family matter, but a matter of public safety and justice. This court is adjourned." As the bailiff led Bria away, she turned to look at me one last time. The hatred in her eyes was undisguised, a moment of raw truth amid all the performances. My parents filed out without acknowledging me, my mother leaning heavily on my father's arm. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered, eager for statements. Aunt Gillian ushered me toward her car, shielding me from the questions being shouted. As we drove away, I felt an overwhelming mix of emotions. Relief that the truth had been acknowledged, grief for the family I had lost or perhaps had never really had, and beneath it all, a tentative sense of freedom. The weeks that followed brought significant changes. Bria accepted a plea deal that included probation, mandatory therapy, and a restraining order preventing her from contacting me. My parents paid for everything, of course, and continued to insist publicly that the incident had been misunderstood and that our family would heal from this difficult time. My grandmother recovered enough to move in with Aunt Gillian temporarily, unwilling to return to my parents' home. She revised her will again, this time excluding Bria entirely and reducing my parents' inheritance significantly. "Actions have consequences," she told me during one of our afternoon tea sessions. "It's a lesson they should have learned long ago." With Aunt Gillian's help, I found a new apartment in a secure building with an elevator. My colleagues at the marketing firm welcomed me back with understanding and flexibility, allowing me to work remotely until I felt ready to return to the office. The physical therapy continued, painful but necessary, gradually restoring my strength and mobility. Perhaps the most significant change was internal. Working with Dr. Stein, I began to recognize and dismantle the harmful beliefs I had internalized growing up. The constant message that my needs were less important, that keeping the peace meant accepting mistreatment, that family loyalty required self-erasure. Those beliefs had shaped my relationships with everyone, not just my family. 6 months after the incident, I received an unexpected letter from my mother. Unlike her previous attempts at contact, which had focused on putting the family back together without any acknowledgement of wrongdoing, this letter contained something new, a tentative admission of failure. "I don't know when things went so wrong," she wrote. "Perhaps we did favor Bria. Perhaps we should have listened to you more. I miss my daughter." It wasn't a full apology or a complete recognition of the harm done, but it was a start. After discussing it with Dr. Stein, I agreed to meet my mother at a neutral location, a cafe halfway between our homes. The conversation was awkward and stilted. Years of dysfunctional patterns couldn't be undone in a single meeting. But for the first time, my mother seemed to actually hear me when I spoke about my experiences growing up. We agreed to monthly lunches, a tentative rebuilding on new terms. My father remained distant, unable or unwilling to acknowledge any mistake. Bria had moved to Chicago after completing her court-mandated therapy, apparently starting fresh where her history wasn't known. I felt no desire to reconnect with her. The memory of her satisfied smile as I fell was still vivid in my mind. On the 1-year anniversary of the incident, I returned to Massachusetts General Hospital with a gift basket for the staff who had helped me. Nurse Marlene greeted me with a warm hug, marveling at my recovery. "You look wonderful," she said. "Strong." "I feel strong," I replied, realizing it was true. The physical healing had been the easier part. The emotional healing continued, with setbacks and difficult days. But I was building a life based on truth rather than pretense, surrounding myself with people who valued me as I was. In the end, the security camera that captured my sister's deliberate act of violence had done more than provide evidence for a court case. It had shattered the carefully constructed illusion that had defined my family. The painful truth it revealed had set me on a path toward authentic healing and self-discovery. Sometimes the family we build matters more than the family we're born into. That's the lesson I carry forward, one day at a time. What's your experience with family dynamics? Have you ever had to set boundaries with toxic relatives or been in a situation where telling the truth cost you relationships? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe for more stories about healing and finding strength in difficult situations. Remember that your truth matters, even when others try to deny it. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you courage on your own path to healing.